Hi, welcome to the Skywood Recovery Alumni Podcast. I'm Heather Gording. I'm an alcoholic in recovery. Today I am 332 days sober. Our guest today is John. Hi, John. Welcome.
Hi. Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here too. John is an alumni who was a resident here November 2023.
Yes.
Yep. And so John and I met through the Alumni Recovery Dharma Zoom meeting that happens every Friday evening. And John is here to tell us a story, share his story with us. John, what is your DOC, or what was your DOC?
Yes, so my addiction is to alcohol, to drugs, and to sex. So It's a process addiction in addition to substance.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's a big thing, yeah. Before you get into your recovery story, tell us the turning point where you realized that you needed a change in your life.
Sure, I've been in recovery for a long time, 30 plus years, so there have been several of those turning points, right? And it's been a journey that just, there's been a step where I first went to SAA for a recovery for sex addiction, and then later a journey into AA, and most recently NA and CMA and Recovery Dharma.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for sharing that, John. So share with us now a bit about your journey, your most recent journey, what brought you to Skywood, maybe a little bit about the time while you were in here, Skywood, and then also share with us what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting year. So the last year has been challenging in so many ways. Ultimately, an addiction to crystal meth is what brought me to Skywood. I reached that point of total powerlessness, needed help, and gratefully had the courage to ask for help, in getting myself here. But my story goes way back to being a kid growing up in rural Indiana, a gay kid at a time and place where there was no possibility of acceptance. And that's really the root of all of the struggles that I've had.
Yeah, that's really heavy, especially with our age, going back to the years when we were kids. Being gay, that was just unheard of. There was tons of being bullied, being called out on it, and basically almost shunned from society for it.
Yeah, it was a different time, and I think for younger people, they may not remember, because the times have become a lot more accepting, thankfully.
Yes.
But folks may not remember what it was like back in the 1980s when being gay was still listed on the American Psychology Association's list of mental illnesses. And so there was even not a positive vocabulary for understanding what was happening when I felt an attraction to a boy in 7th grade. There was a beautiful puppy love situation that we all go through, but it was very traumatic for me because there was no support.
Oh, that must have been horrible for you. So at that age, what did you do then when you felt shunned, when you felt like people were just going to point their fingers at you, laugh?
Yeah, my mom was very in tune. She was one who picked up on my differences as a kid. But keeping in mind where she grew up and where we were living in rural Indiana, she told me at one point in time when I was about 12 that gay people exist in the world. However, that's not acceptable for our family or for you. And so I learned and was told to hide and that I could not exist. So this huge part of my life, which was just beginning to bud, was in essence clipped off at that point in time. And in those days, I would get out into nature. So I would go, out to this cornfield near my house and go for walks along the gravel lane there. And that was sort of my special spiritual place. I would go there to pray, to cry, and really to sort of beg God to change me. And so I didn't have anything else I could do other than asking to be changed.
Oh, That's, oh, Jen, my heart goes out to you. Oh my gosh. So you go through the years, you're getting a little older. What led you to either your process addiction or your substance addictions?
Yeah, you know, I think it began with repression of sexual orientation as it was developing. In addition to that, there was a boy in the neighborhood whose father had this vast porn collection. Now, in those days, it was all magazines, right? This is way pre-internet. And so naturally, all the boys in the neighborhood would gather at this house and we would, you know, look at the magazines. And I noticed that, again, I was drawn to the images of men and the pictures, but these were grown men, very different than me I was just a child. And so that really worked my sense of sexuality in addition to the repression.
Sure.
And so what I learned then is that my sexual expression had to be very secret and very in the dark. And so again, I was hiding. That led later on to sexual behaviors. I learned that, you know, through television and through media reports, that the story I was told, the narrative, is that a queer person needs to, will be very promiscuous, will hang out in dark places like bars and nightclubs and other spots, adult bookstores and the like. So that was the path that led me into those types of behaviors that then, became unmanageable and really started to create devastating effect in my life.
Yeah, wow. Looking back when society didn't accept homosexuality, where it led a lot of gay people. Yeah.
Deeply into the closet.
Yeah, definitely.
Into the shadows.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then that was so devastating that I found that if I would drink alcohol, that I would feel more calm and also less repressed. And so alcohol came into my life at a point when my nerves were shattered because of all that was going on otherwise. And I felt such a sense of peace, when I was drinking. Initially it really calmed my nerves.
Sure.
And so alcohol became part of my addiction at that point in time.
Okay, and about how old were you when you started drinking?
My first time of drinking was at age 15.
Okay.
And that was, getting totally drunk and blackout drunk on vodka. When I came home from that, I was at a ball game with some friends, and when I came home, my dad just laughed because he's an active alcoholic. So he was like, "Yay, I'm so proud of my son. He's one of the boys now."
Wow. Wow.
So it was strange because that built a connection with my dad around drinking.
Yeah, definitely. And boy, you didn't just, you went for the hard stuff too.
I did.
No starting from the bottom with those wine coolers.
Nope. It was, playing quarters with vodka and just over drinking really to a dangerous level for the first time. Yeah,
definitely. And that's something that I can relate to as a recovering alcoholic, where alcohol for me, it deadened the pain. It put me in a completely different world per se, where nothing, all of the negative things in my life didn't exist. Yeah. So.
And when you're hiding and then you would use alcohol, it was like light bulbs went off and I was now very social. I felt more confident. And so it brought a lot. It really did. But unfortunately, those things were all also damaging and led us further up the scale.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you've gotten into your process addiction, your sex addiction, and then your alcohol. What led you? Did you do meth back then, or was that your most recent?
That was very recent. So
okay.
I was first introduced to meth after being sober from alcohol and then relapsing with alcohol, combining drinking and sex, and then in a sexual situation was introduced to meth. That was in February of 2023. Okay. So that was just a little over a year ago.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I had never used any narcotic drug over that time.
Okay, all right.
And it came into my life in such a sneaky way, like I didn't know what it was when it was offered to me. Mm-hmm. Street names were used, and I'm not familiar with street names, so it's like, here, smoke this. Okay, and I did, and was hooked immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Nowadays, we really, people need to be aware of what they're given and really use wise judgment and do I do this or don't I do this? And the best answer is don't do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
But in that moment, you know how substance abuse does tend to sort of sneak in.
Yes.
It's a warm friend at first,
Yes.
and then becomes a master that you can't gain any control or power over. And so for me, meth is what took me far down the scale. Within about 8 months of use, I lost 25 pounds. It was really clear to my family and loved ones that something was wrong, even though I hid it very well. But I reached the point where I couldn't hide it. I was having paranoid hallucinations.
Wow.
And that was the point when I asked for help and got real with loved ones and my AA sponsor about what was going on.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So let's go back to your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So your dad was very excited that his boy came home drunk. Oh yeah, right. How long did that go on for? Was your dad always like, yeah, go for it, dude? Or and what did your mom think about those situations?
Yeah, I grew up in an alcoholic household. So my dad is a functioning alcoholic today. He makes moonshine and wine, and so his entire social and relational life is always centered around alcohol. So that was a very prevalent theme. There were always trucks in the driveway of my dad's buddies who were coming over to drink beer and build race cars together. That's what they did. And so I was always very separate from that. I was in the house with my mom, being a more sensitive and artistic kid. I felt very afraid to go out and venture into the man's world of the barn.
Sure. Yeah.
And drink beer with dad. Yeah. The barn was the place we went when we were in trouble, to get a talking to from dad. So I hid away from that. But my mom and I formed probably an inappropriately close bond in that she tended to make me her little man. Like, I was involved in solving family problems because dad was absent really from the family because of his drinking.
Wow, so you had a lot on your shoulders at a young age.
Yeah, not only being burdened with questions about my identity and no place to go, but then shouldering the responsibility for the family as well. So that set up other patterns of addiction, like people pleasing and trying to be perfect all the time because I felt responsible.
Oh wow, boy, what a childhood you had! Oh my gosh. So, in your childhood, were you like, was this around probably middle school, high school age? Okay.
Yeah, that was when I first realized my problem with my core identity. I was told to hide. So I was mentioning that gravel lane between the cornfields. I would go out there to cry and pray, and there was one specific memory I have where I was just begging for help from God. And through my tears, I saw this flutter of something. Mm-hmm. And when I opened my eyes, it was a grasshopper, a flying grasshopper, a Carolina locust.
Okay.
But it just flittered away, and that drew me out of my moment of being all in my head, and so I became fascinated with this flying grasshopper. They were so magical. They were these gray, dead-looking grasshoppers on the ground, mm-hmm. but then they would sprout these beautiful wings and fly, 50 yards. They were like magical fairies in a way. So I was out there on that field with these fairy grasshoppers all around me, and it told me something in my heart that I didn't understand cognitively yet, and that there's a beauty in creation, and that there are these really strange elements of creation, like a grasshopper that flies. It was very transformative. I didn't fully understand at the time, but all I knew is I wanted to catch one of them, and they flew too fast. I was never able to catch one, which frustrated me. So there was a sense of frustrated desire about something in my life that I wanted to hold on to, but wasn't ready yet.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's quite the analogy that you put together there. I love that. Okay, so you're going through middle school, high school. Did you always feel, especially in the later years of high school, did you feel like your homosexuality was threatened in any way whatsoever?
Well, it wasn't really, I felt threatened.
Okay.
I was always on guard, isolated, much of a loner. I was hiding, so I just was hiding from everyone.
Okay.
So if somebody spoke to me even, I was, I would get really nervous, very shy. So it wasn't until when I was in college that I began to sort of come out of my shell socially.
Okay.
A lot of drinking involved, of course. But then I started dating girls. And I had a religious experience, became a born-again Christian. I grew up in a Catholic family where we didn't hear that kind of thing. But I believed that religion would save me both from being gay and possibly primarily from being gay. I didn't want to go to hell, as I was told. And so she was the first person I ever told that I thought I was gay. She did not reject me, and so I married her.
Oh, wow. Wow.
We were both marrying each other for the wrong reasons, of course. She was in an abusive home. Her father was the pastor of our church, and she needed a safe guy who was not going to abuse her, and that was me. And so we both sort of clung on to each other. We were married for 11 years.
So married, I can't even say married for the wrong reasons, really. You were there for each other as a support system. Yeah. So in high school, did you ever drink while in school, go to school drunk?
My drinking wasn't that type of drinking. Now, my twin brother had that problem. Okay. He would show up, he would go to school drunk all the time. But I was in caretaking mode, remember? So I was watching out for my brother, covering for him, protecting him. So my drinking tended to be more in social settings, or I would sneak multiple beers out of the fridge. I've always been a lightweight, so with alcohol, it doesn't take a lot to get me to blackout drunk. Okay. So 4 to 6 beers was typically where I would go.
Okay, fine. So you were here in Skywood. Is that something that you did on your own? Did you have an intervention?
No, I knew I needed help, and at the time I was talking to a therapist who recommended Skywood, and so I was one of those who came here on my own. I called and with my husband's help and was able to get here. So I'm grateful that I was able to be here. I was here for only 2 weeks. Now when I was here, I really wished I could have stayed for 30 days, but my insurance wasn't covering it, and I had not yet disclosed to my employer the problem. I still haven't disclosed my addiction problem to my employer for a lot of reasons. One of them is just it's very private, and I don't want it to impact me at work. So I just took a couple of weeks of vacation and came here and just got as much as I could. In hindsight, I should have stayed for 30 days.
Okay. What did it feel like? Was Skywood the first time you were ever in a recovery facility?
Yeah.
How did it feel like when you were coming in?
Well, I was so excited to come because it's so beautiful here. I was viewing it sort of like a retreat into the woods. I was pretty naive. I arrived and I went through the detox period and then got out into the general population of residents, and I loved it. It was not scary at all. I was very optimistic about being here, and so I knew that this was the path. I was ready.
Good. Yeah, that's exactly that's what I was feeling too. Very excited to be here. Excited to get my life back. So you were here for 2 weeks, and I know from being here myself that Skywood has a very regimented schedule for the residents. What did you think of the classes, the process groups, your therapy sessions?
Yeah, it was all so beneficial. Process group was really, I think, for me, a highlight of being here. But I also think it was just pulling away from life and being in a protective bubble without access to phones and all of that. We grumbled about it, of course.
Yes.
But that's part of the experience.
Yes.
It truly is, to pull away from life and create this space for some recovery to begin. And the classes were amazing. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. I was really dealing with a lot of grief when I came here, in part because my ex-wife, who is also my son's mother, had passed away about 6 months before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that was really feeding into my use of crystal meth, and I didn't fully understand grief's connection, but I learned that here, and I think that really strengthened my recovery.
Yeah. Well, that's something to really consider when coming in. That I know for myself, coming here in therapy sessions and process groups, I learned that I had not processed my grief whatsoever, and I was able to do that while I was here. Learn how to do that, so that's really huge for you. I'm glad that you were able to do that.
Yeah, and it's a continuing journey, right? Because grief evolves and then our lives grow around it.
Yes.
And that's part of what I learned here is that you move through acceptance and anger and loss. The impact for me was that I had lost a primary person who had abused or traumatized me. So throughout our marriage and then after our marriage, I was constantly on edge trying to keep my ex-wife happy. And when she died unexpectedly, I immediately jumped into taking care of our son. So we have a son together. And so it wasn't really until I came here that I was free to address my own grief.
Was there anything else while you were here for those 2 weeks that was brought up in you that you were unaware of, that was going on inside?
Yeah, another part of it is looking and assessing my current relationship with my husband. So he and I have been together now for 22 years. So what I realized here was that I had sort of created the marriage I had with my ex-wife again with my husband.
Okay.
And that the dynamic in the home was not healthy. So the comedian who comes to Skywood, Mark
Monhall.
Yeah, he was here one day and he said to me, just sort of out of the blue, it's very intuitive.
Yes.
He said, John, there are 2 men in your house and you get to live your life, And that was really an enlightening moment. I realized that I do have the permission to be. And this goes all the way back to my own childhood trauma, that I don't have to hide who I am.
No, never hide who you are. You're a beautiful person. Oh my gosh. Okay, so is there one moment in Skywood that really sticks in your mind and in your heart?
Yeah, there are several. One of them is, well, on the positive side. Let's start on the positive side first, because there were a lot of great experiences.
Yeah, definitely.
One day I had a bit of a panic attack, and I had no idea where that came from. And I just left the large group session. I needed to get out of the room. And one of the staff members sat with me and walked me through a grounding exercise where I was able to be grounded in my body. And I'm using that tool today. So that was a new tool that was given to me that has been really helpful.
That's a very spiritual tool too.
It is. Yeah, that whenever life are stuck in our head, we can just simply get grounded on the earth with our feet on the ground and hear the sounds and smell the smells. So that's been a really good tool. Another on the challenging side, relationships with co-residents can be, there are people who have their struggles. I'm one of us. So there were tensions that would arise. And one particular time, I'm a person living with HIV, there was another person here who had told his process group that he had HIV, and that was shared outside of the group. And I was sitting at lunch one day, and he was right next to me. And when he left the table, another guy was coming to sit, and one of the individuals at the table said, "Oh, dude, don't sit there. You know, that guy has AIDS." And I spoke up, and I said, that AIDS cannot, or HIV is not transmittable through casual contact, and if a person is medicated, it's untransmittable, period. And so it was a moment of, in a way, sort of speaking my own truth,
Yes.
but addressing a problem that was happening right there before me, because I knew that individual who was here for recovery, he would have been damaged by that spreading. And I even told those two, you don't share what's shared in process groups.
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's like any recovery group, support group that we go to. It's, what is shared in that group stays within that group. So I really commend you for doing that, sticking up not only for that resident, but for yourself as well. That's beautiful that you did that.
Yeah, I'm learning to do that more and more in my life, and being able to hold my own spot in the world, which is this beautiful place that's been designed for me, I believe. And what recovery does, my recovery brings my true self into the world, and the world needs me, and I need to be my true self. So this is part of what I'm learning today.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that for you, John. I love that for the world.
Yes.
I do. So you mentioned the grounding technique. Are there any other coping mechanisms that you learned maybe while you were in Skywood that you're using today?
Yeah, grounding is important. Meditation has become important to me. And I started practicing that when I was here. I didn't realize I was practicing it. What I would do is go for walks, and through nature, connecting with nature would then bring me into a meditative state. And so I would sit out on the boardwalk,
Yes.
and just connect with nature, being grounded, breathe deeply. And through those practices, I began to see a clearer picture of my life. In terms of where I've been. So the beginning of the practice of meditation is something that I took from Skyward.
Okay, that's awesome. I love that.
And that's led really well into our work with the Recovery Dharma.
Yes, definitely.
So that has been such a great addition to my recovery. It's probably the greatest key that I feel is daily meditation.
Yeah, meditation, it helps us to be aware of ourselves. We also have to sit with our feelings and process them instead of drinking them away or snorting them away or anything like that.
Or run away. We can run, work and all kinds of things. Just to sit and be still and breathe is a powerful thing.
Do you have any advice for anyone that is considering thinking of their addictions and any of that? Just what advice do you have?
Yeah, just from my own experience, it is that our addictions lead us to a place where we a total loss of control. And it's really important to step out of hiding into reality and by asking for help from another person, whether it's a therapist or a family member. I learn and continually relearn this lesson in life, which is whenever I'm hiding, it's not good. And so being honest with myself and others is the key thing. I'm really glad that I continue to do that. I had a brief relapse after I left Skywood, and just forgot to delete one phone number, was holding on to it probably as a reservation, if I'm honest. And it got bad fast again within 20 hours. And so I immediately, I didn't hide it, I just reached out to my 12-step programs and my sponsor and my therapist, and I got help. And just getting honest that fast has really led me to understand that the help is always available if I will ask for it. No need to hide anymore.
I am so glad that you did that. I really am. So we would like to ask you, for our next guest that comes on, what question would you like them to answer?
That's a good question, and you prompted me on that, and I forgot to think that through, so I'm going to go right off the cuff.
Sounds good.
Yeah, to me, I always love hearing the stories of people who are recovering. So hearing that person's story is so important. And then the other part of it is, what is their connection to the recovering community? Because that connection is what really restores us from addiction. You know, addiction is the opposite of connection.
Yes.
And so having a recovering community of people that we're in constant contact with, in addition to a higher power, if that's your thing, or through meditation to yourself, that's really important. Is to how are you maintaining those connections that are so key.
All right, well, we'll be sure to ask them that. Well, John, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was great to finally meet you. I know that we've talked a lot during our Recovery Dharma Zoom meeting, and to be able to meet you today has been a gift.
Yeah,
a total gift.
I'm so happy as well.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming up and doing this. Well, thank you for joining us today on Skyward Recovery's Alumni Podcast, and we hope to see you next time. See you later.
Bye.